Well, greetings again, everyone. It's been a couple weeks since I've shared with you, and just kind of had something on my mind for several days, so I thought I'd share it with you today. A little bit of a side note: we've come a long ways on these thought for the day from hoodies because of the coolness outside to now short sleeves and still feeling very warm from the mugginess. It's kind of surreal, at least from my perspective, this whole process. Nevertheless, we are continuing on by the help and the grace of God. I've got a, sorry, it's kind of dirty, but I've got this shoe. I've had these shoes for probably 4 or 5 years at least. I think I initially got them as just casual shoes, and then started using them for some exercise and stuff. And in the past several months at least, they have become basically my work shoes for outdoors. And about 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was outside and I was doing some work, and I had them on, and I felt something pokey in the heel of the of this left shoe, and I automatically assumed, because of the fact I've been wearing these for, again, 4 or 5 years, and a good amount of the time that I've worn them has, again, been for some kind of exercise, so not just simple casual walking around. And so I just kind of made the assumption that there was something in the structure of the shoe that was, because of the wear on it, was now beginning to poke through to my heel. It wasn't anything unbearable, and the first time I felt it, I just continued working and was able to kind of manage the way I stepped so that it wouldn't really hurt. And before I wore them the next time, I went and tried to get a pair of pliers or something, a screwdriver, I don't remember exactly, and push on the spot where I felt the thing poking into my heel, thinking again something in the structure of the shoe, and if I could sort of push it over, bend it, it wouldn't affect me. And so I tried that and put the shoe back on and went to work, only to kind of figure out that my attempt at bending whatever it was really not successful. And worked for a little while, and finally had the brilliant idea, of all things, to take the shoe off and actually check the bottom of the shoe. And wouldn't you know, it had nothing to do with the structure of the shoe. Somehow I had stepped on a nail, and a nail was poking through the heel of the shoe just enough that I was able to feel it when I walked. And there was a real simple solution to that. Get a pair of pliers and pull the nail out. And as is often the case with very simple experiences in life for me, God begins to teach me something from that. And I realized from that the idea of how often, and I do believe often, how often we sort of make assumptions and really misdiagnose things in our lives. We see the symptoms, and because of the symptoms, we can begin to assume what the real problem is. Part of the problem with that, and from a physical standpoint, symptoms can really be connected to a variety of things. I mean, just take a headache. A headache can be a symptom of a lot of different things. It's not one automatic issue. And so if we're not careful, we can make assumptions about what's needed. I looked a couple of minutes ago on good old Google of at the issue of misdiagnosis by healthcare professionals, and there is a percentage. One thing I read was as high as 44% of people are misdiagnosed, and I don't mean this at all as a criticism of the healthcare professionals, because they're going based on their knowledge, their experience. They're not God. God is the only one who knows exactly all the time what the issue is. And there's a number of challenges that arise from a misdiagnosis. One of those can be, based on a misdiagnosis, you can be prescribed a wrong treatment or a wrong medication. And therefore, you're not really dealing with the issue. And then you also could be exposing yourself to a whole nother realm of issues, of side effects. Ultimately, I guess worst case scenario of a misdiagnosis is it could lead to death. And I think all of those principles apply to our relationship with God, our walk with God. We must pursue allowing the Spirit of the Lord to help guide us in our lives with regards to what's the real issue. Let's just take anger, for example. If you're battling anger, what's the real issue? Because anger really is just a symptom. And if we're not careful, we can make assumptions about the root of the problem. If you've been around Antioch very long, if you've heard me minister very much, at some point you probably have heard me make the point. It's my goal, it's my desire in counseling, in talking to people, to try to get to the root of the issue, not the symptom, because part of the problem of dealing with the symptom is that's kind of like pruning a tree, and when you prune it, it gets healthier. And so if we get to the root of the problem, we can really get to true solutions, not just momentary relief. And I guess the other point that kind of hit me, and I hope maybe there's somebody that will watch this, that this will help you. My assumption with what was poking into my heel was, in this context, it was worst case scenario. The shoe was worn out. I really had reached the max, and I perhaps just needed to bite the bullet and find another pair of work shoes. And it turned out it was a much simpler solution than that. I just simply needed to turn the shoe over, find the nail, and pull it out. And I think a lot of times the enemy is very successful at causing us to do similar to what I did with my shoe, and that is come to sort of extreme conclusions. And the problem with that is the solutions that we find in that scenario are usually extreme solutions. It's not a minor adjustment. It's not a minor tweaking of something. It's like this complete overhaul that is needed, when in fact the Spirit of the Lord just needs to make a minor adjustment. And I guess one other point I wanna add in here as I wind down. The other challenge is when we are dealing with offenses, when we have offenses, from a scriptural perspective, and I'm not going to take the time to explain it all in this video, but from a scriptural perspective, that affects our perception. It skews our perception to the point that if I am carrying offenses, I really can't trust any perceptions. There may be an element of truth in my perceptions, but from a biblical perspective, from biblical principles, my perceptions are not going to be fully accurate when I am looking through some kind of a lens of offense. I will interpret everything I see, everything I hear, everything I experience is going to be interpreted through that filter of offense. And that as well, I believe, contributes to why we often come up with sort of more extreme diagnosis of what our issue is, rather than finding what may very well be a simple answer. Now, please understand, I am not implying that there is never a major issue, and that, like my shoe, you may very well reach a point in some areas that it does require some kind of very significant change, adjustment. But I really think that more often than not, it's not that kind of drastic, major change that's needed. It's just we need to turn over the shoe, find the nail, and pull out the nail. And what do you know? I can now wear these shoes for a while longer with absolutely no discomfort, because I finally found the real issue rather than what I assumed was the issue. So I want to challenge you today. If you're struggling with some things, if you're trying to get some solutions to some situations in your life, would you pause long enough and ask the Lord, and then take enough time? He doesn't always answer the very second we ask, but ask and then take enough time to wait and find out from Him. Is your shoe really done and time to get rid of it, or do you just need to make a minor adjustment? And I really believe that there's some of you that will be watching this that it's just really as simple as that. There's a nail in your shoe, so to speak, and if you could just pull out the nail, it's really not quite as bad as the enemy has made it out to be. Thanks again for sharing some of your time to watch this video. I trust that ultimately the Spirit of the Lord would speak to you through it, in Jesus' name.